Well, hi, everybody, and good afternoon or good morning, wherever you may be. Thank you for joining us for another Webster webinar in our Webster webinar series. This is about the fifth year that we've been doing these topics, all around the ideas of our careers and where we find ourselves. Maybe we're changing jobs, maybe we're aiming for a promotion, maybe we're um, in a later stage of our career where we want to change industries, but no matter what, I know the Webster University career team is excited to be a resource to you, both during and after the university experience. My name is James Beal. I'll be the host for today. We also have with us John Link, who's the Director of Career Development and Planning at Webster University. He will be, what would you say, kind of lurking in the background and taking notes on today's really exciting topic. And we have Tanja Kirby and Megan Quinn with us as experts today with the topic of first-time management and some do's and don'ts. So if we want to get started right here, maybe I'll start with you, Tanja. You just want to say hello to the group and maybe mention, why you think this is a topic that you like to weigh in on.
Certainly. Well, hi everyone. My name is Tanja Kirby. I'm an HR business partner with Webster University. I've been here since October of last year, so I've made it officially a year. Yahoo! And so I'm super excited to be here. This is an exciting topic to talk about, specifically because my background is really on first-time management training. Going through initial training and figuring out what new managers need to know, what they should know right off the bat as far as policies and procedures, and recruiting, performance management, promotion, succession planning, and all those important topics that come up on the day-to-day. And also, discipline is a hard conversation sometimes to have with managers, but managers who have a really good grasp on it understand the concept and the importance of making sure that their team is set up for success. So really important topic today. I'm excited to be here with you guys to talk about those particular issues and looking forward to a really progressive conversation.
Well, thank you for that, Tanya. It's really cool that you mentioned, when I think of first-time management, I think of as someone taking a big step forward in their career, and the idea of getting that off to a successful start and not taking bruises. I love the way you pitched it. And how about you, Megan? Talk about who you are and what you hope to share today.
Good afternoon. Again, my name is Meg Quinn, and I have been with Webster for a little over a month. So I love talking about this newbie aspect. And I've been in HR for 14 years, and I've actually been in management for a few years as well. So I appreciate this topic, not only from an HR perspective, as Tanja had shared, all of the different HR pieces and facets of it, but also having been a first-time manager previously, I can speak to that as well. So excited to be here.
Well, very cool. I think we can jump right in. And so this first question, I'll set it up a little bit. In another one of my positions, I actually just became a manager of a team. And these were my colleagues for a year, and now I'm the boss. And I don't want the dynamic to change, but by the same token, I'm responsible for new things. So in your guys' case, we'll start with you, Tanya. When starting a new role in a leadership position, this could be someone's first time supervising staff. So what are a few of the first steps you'd recommend for a new manager to take when beginning to supervise staff?
Well, it's really important, like the first step. And so I too was a manager as well. That was important to know as well, Meg. So thank you for mentioning that. But I too was a manager and had to transition from teaching, from being alongside my colleagues to now I'm in charge of my colleagues for their performance, their management, their timesheets, their annual reviews, their training, and all those good things. So the transition was actually pretty hard for me because I'm a talker, and everyone knows who was on my team. He's like, I'm a talker. Tanja likes to explain, overly explain, but that was only to set people up for success. So the transition was a little difficult for me, but it's really important that first-time managers really, don't straddle the fence on this particular topic, because when you straddle the fence, you got, things on both sides that you're kind of struggling with. So the best thing is to just jump the fence as a manager. The first thing to do really is, take some time to learn your role as a first-time manager, but also take the time to know all of the employee roles as well. And that's super important because sometimes you'll have employees going outside of the role doing things that, they're not supposed to be doing, or things that are not productive or conducive to the team. So you definitely want to make sure that you meet with all of your employees to figure out, what they do, pull out their job description if need be, and kind of figure out their roles and their responsibility. You definitely don't want like 2 or 3 people doing the exact same thing if that's not going to help the team out. So the best thing to do is kind of, to figure out where do we need to conquer and divide and kind of, separate tasks. But the third thing to do is really let the team know that, have meetings with your team consistently, and don't break that monotony, because meeting with your team is going to be super important on moving forward and making sure that you guys are moving towards the same direction. And you always want to be moving forward. And also make sure that you are not only talking with your team, but planning with your team. Planning what are the next steps, what's going to make us stand out to maybe there's different teams that you're competing with or whatever, make it fun, make it exciting. But everyone wants to do their best. So you always want to ask them, what's the next step for you? What's the next step for this team? What's the next step? How can we get, to that next level so that we're recognized for, our performance, our productivity, and our effectiveness. But the things that I think a lot of managers make the mistake is, first, they don't discuss, they don't talk with their team. Avoiding it doesn't make any issues go away. Actually, it creates more issues. So I think the more that you talk to your employees, the more that you know, and the more that you're in the know. And then the second mistake is that managers make is they assume things are taken care of instead of basically doing their roles. And managers have to realize, I am responsible for this team. So if this team fails, I fail, right? So it's really important that you understand if your goals are in line, your tasks are in line with the company that you're working for. Because if it's not, the only person that's going to get blamed is the manager. So you have to really make sure that those are all in line. And that's really starting with the communication. So communication is the key. I cannot emphasize it more. You have to make sure that you're communicating with your team and emphasizing what's important and what's not important.
Yep, no, that is super cool. And in this position I just took, with all this more paperwork that got thumped on my desk, I immediately realized how much I needed to communicate with these team members and set up one-on-one calls with them. Otherwise, I was going to get overwhelmed. So I totally agree. It opened my mind on how much more important it is to have that peer-to-peer communication.
Right.
At least in my standpoint, because I need so much help to get all these new things done. Meg, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I think Tanja did a great job covering that communication piece, because that is so key. I would say absolutely that organizational piece of it. But one thing that's important to understand as you step back is understanding what your management or leadership style is and how that kind of feeds into the group, thinking about who you have in your group, particularly in your case, James, where you're going from colleague to manager. Thinking about those who you have on your team and how that integrates with your leadership style. Mine, particularly, I appreciate lead by example. I talked about the organizational piece and taking that initiative, not only to open up those lines of communication from a management standpoint with those you're leading, you're managing, but also anyone above you that you can learn from a management standpoint. And then also evaluating the role as far as, which kind of leads to what Tanja was talking about, what is the purpose of this management role? Where is the team at right now? Are there are there a lot of steps to think about where the goals of the team need to go? So I think those are all really great evaluation pieces of being a first-time manager.
And just to piggyback off something Meg said, and I completely agree, thank you, Meg, is one of the things is that I think managers, one of the mistakes that managers make is they come into maybe a team or they're a supervisor and they start making changes or making changes of effectively without really talking with the team members. And that is like maybe one of the biggest mistakes that they can make, first of all, because you don't have the team's buy-in and people work really, really hard for you. They have to like you first and they have to respect you and they have to basically know that you have their best interests at heart. So those individuals who are going to be either ride or die for you are going to be those individuals who feel that way. So if you come in changing everything and, putting people or doing things that they don't normally do without first getting their buy-in, without basically talking with those individuals, can be detrimental to the team. So don't make that costly mistake. Strategize with your team, communicate with your team, try to figure out what that glue is, like Megan said, that gets them going to figure out what's going to be helpful for you all.
I saw in my promotion to this role is only 10 days old, and so I'm like in the middle of learning this as well. And I saw the transition from being a peer to being the manager. I didn't like the dynamic of coming to each person and saying, "Now I'm going to help. I'm going to help you. I'm going to control what you can do." I didn't feel like immediately being a mentor or a coach. I just wasn't ready for that. So I said, I don't really see anything that's different going to change in our relationship, except now I feel like I'm managing the environment that we all work in. So in this big environment, how do you feel? I want you to feel like you have a good career trajectory. I want you to feel like, the day that you spend your time and your tasks on, it's well designed. And so, don't think of me as someone who's, your boss as much as a peer you can confide in. And my job is to make sure that we have this department running well. So I was trying to dance around the idea of that power dynamic change. But, so these managers have all these one-on-one relationships now with the people reporting to them. What questions would you say new managers need to be ready to ask direct reports right away in their first week? And maybe Meg, we can start with you.
Yeah, so I would say the most crucial thing is understanding what that individual, what that report's goals are, what they're currently working on. So then the manager is more aware of, how they can assist in that area, and if the report needs to be directed in other areas. So asking those questions, but at the same time, making sure that that manager, as a manager, I would say, is really listening, really retaining, really building to understand the big picture of that individual and of their team.
And how about you, Tanja?
So I have somebody blowing leaves right outside my window, so it's like super loud. But I would say for first-time managers, bribe your team. Feed them as much as you possibly can feed them. Be super nice in your first 2 weeks. It can never go. And also, I think seriously, I think the most important thing that managers want to know is they just need to go on a listening tour. Not much talk and just a lot of listening and figuring out, what their team's about. Find out important dates, anniversaries, get to know your team. It's going to be important in the long run. And these are going to be the individuals that are going to work overtime for you, who are going to get projects done for you, who are going to basically do things beyond your expectations. And if you want them to go beyond their expectations, then you have to basically make sure that you treat them with the same respect as you would treat anyone. So I think it's super important. Don't make the mistake of just going in and just doing your own thing and be on your own agenda. Just listen and take notes. Different individuals have really, really great ideas. So my old manager used to have a really good saying that I still basically use today. And one of the saying is basically, it takes, all we need is a good set of eyeballs or a new set of eyeballs to see a situation a different way. So it just takes sometimes just one perspective to be that aha moment. But if you're not on that listening tour, you don't respect those employees, people won't come up with those great ideas or maybe good initiatives or whatever it would be. So I would just say just to sit back and listen and enjoy the ride and don't take anything for advantage.
Excellent, excellent points, Tanja. I would say it is absolutely crucial having that buy-in, and from an HR perspective, the only recommendation I would make as a don't is don't pry too much. If a report does not seem maybe interested or comfortable divulging information, personal information. So maybe not outright saying, hey, do you have any kids? Hey, how many kids do you have? Things such as that. If they mention something like that, that would be an appropriate segue, and I would say an indicator that report is telling you that in that area, maybe they feel comfortable sharing that information.
This is interesting. This reminds me of during the interview process where we're trying to get this job, and we have a chance to ask questions of the interviewer. And sometimes one of the line of questioning is, tell me after 90 days what I would have done that would make you think I'm great fit for this job, or can you tell me a little bit about the person who had this job before me, what you think they did really well. But we go into situations that we didn't create. So can you maybe compare or contrast how you would discover some of the things before you? Maybe the person was let go before you, and there's a bad status of things. But how would you kind of step into like a thing that's in motion? Maybe there's some things to be corrected. Maybe Tanja, you can start with that one.
Okay. Well, yeah. So this is an important question, and I want to make sure that I approach it with sensitivity, because sometimes I'll have managers come into my office, and I've been in HR for a very long time, and I've been a manager as well, so I can swap seats with a lot of individuals. So I understand when managers come in, they say, so my predecessor was, basically dropped the ball on this report or this project, and now I'm in control of it, but it's not going well, and now I'm going to be held responsible for it. So it's, and the person who hired me didn't tell me about this, so they're trying to hide it from me, but now I know about it. So I've had all those situations come into my office, and, just trying to work through it. And it's just like, well, now you are responsible for this particular project or this initiative or whatever it is. So the only thing that, I can recommend for managers, sometimes you get dealt a bad hand. It's how you're going to deal with that bad hand, is how to figure things out. You don't conquer Rome in a day. It takes time. So it's just basically, you're going to have to figure out and use all of those skills that that basically allowed you to get this job, and try to figure out who are the people that I can bring into a project and help me manage it all. Because, we don't do things all on our own. A part of being a manager and a part of being a supervisor is knowing how to delegate, but not just delegate to the right individuals, because remember, you're still responsible for those particular tasks. So accountability goes a long way. And if you can pull out a success, or even if you can't pull out a success, you need to take account for what your responsibility is. It was my responsibility to do this particular initiative. We fell short on a couple of things, but we learned for next year. So you always pull something out positive. It may not go your way, but you have to figure out how to bring some positive out in it, and figure out what you brought to it, and say, I wasn't able to do it this my predecessor. And you don't know how people think about it. They probably say, well, it was actually better than what your predecessor did, to figure out what the next steps are. But I would just say, work with what you have. Look at your team surrounding you and figure out who's going to be best equipped to help me figure these things out. And also, if you won people in your team without being too much prying, if you basically pull those individuals in, you basically talk to people, their skill sets, and someone who is basically maybe new to the team but has an excellent skill set, you give someone an opportunity to kind of prove themselves or whatever. It's just a lot of give and care. But the accountability and responsibility still lies on the manager. And your manager is going to be expecting you things, but the best thing to do in these sort of instances is to basically communicate. Don't give out any false hopes. Don't say, you know, don't make any false promises to your manager, but fully and honestly communicate so that the expectations are set, and so that they understand where you're coming from and what you had to work with, but still taking accountability.
So Meg, same question as that, and then a bit of a twist maybe. When you step into a new position, do you think generally employees are seeing that there's a change happening and they're willing to give the new person a try, or do you think that there might be kind of a little bit of momentum there and the new person has a bit of an uphill battle? So is it like, you know, how do you look at that? Is it a reset where you come in fresh, or what do you think's on the employees' minds as you're stepping in?
So let me see if I understand what you're saying, James. So as a manager bringing a new hire in, is that what you're saying? Or as a new?
As a new manager coming in, and let's say that there's some kind of baggage from the previous situation, do you think just in general, when you as a new manager are stepping in, employees tend to see it as a reset and they're willing to give you the benefit of the doubt? Or do you think that it's really up to you, and I think accountability is what Tanja said, to do a little bit of healing as this? I'm just kind of curious what you think the employees tend to think when a person steps in. Fresh start, or this person's gonna have to deal with some stuff?
Oh gosh, that's an excellent question. It really just depends upon the situation. And you know, if you've done that digging as far as feeling like your questions, meetings with those team members, you've pretty well have a good idea. I would say your manager above you is probably going to be a great resource to understand which direction you're going to go in, or which direction may be most appropriate. So yeah, it would really depend upon the situation.
So yeah, and I think using your manager as a resource is important, because not only might this person have things to share with you, but it's a way of creating visibility for the things, so there's no surprises at the end. I think that's a really cool thought. We're not an island, you know. We have our resources, both people that we're managing, but also other folks in the organization that can help us. So go ahead.
That's an excellent point, is not only using your people resources, but you know, any other resources to help research and understand the big picture.
Interesting. So changing gears a little bit, we talked about the first-time management experience. It's something both that we are learning to do as the first-time manager. Our employees are getting to know us, our staff, people that we report to, and then there's like the situations that, you know, maybe we're helping the company through a new product launch or some type of thing. And so, you know, we've talked about trying to navigate that with communication, I think, is what I really heard as a theme. Let's change gears and let's talk about what makes you think a good manager. Would you say, and I'll go to you, Tanja, what are 2 or 3 skills that you think are super essential? And let's say, you know, right away in that first maybe 6 weeks.
That's a good question. So I would say being able to, so I was watching old movies the other day, and you guys remember Minority Report, how he basically brought the screen up and he would separate everything. And so the first thing to do is organize. So I was thinking of Minority Report, I don't know why. And the second thing is to basically be active. And then I think the third thing is just to be persistent, and to try to figure out, you know, what things need to be done. The organizational thing is going to be critically important, because if you don't organize your time, you're going to be in the office till like 8 o'clock every night. And you know, because I'm in HR, I'm going to say this, you know, you definitely want to balance your life your work life and your home life so that you actually have a home to go to. So make sure that you organize, because we don't want your home life breaking up because you're always here at your second home. But make sure that you organize and you can break those things up and you can attack them strategically. So you have to be very strategic minded. And the active part is just really being actively involved in a lot of the things or the actions that are happening within your department. You don't want to be passive, because, you know, if there's a situation or a concern or an issue, if you're passive, that doesn't make that issue go away. It just makes it bigger. So the more active you are, the things that you can subside, you can. Those things that you can't control, then at least you have one eye on it, so you can kind of basically figure out, where should I turn? What resource should I use? And sometimes that's calling us in HR. And then the persistent thing is just continue to move. Be persistent about what you want to accomplish. Be persistent about what you want your team to accomplish. Be persistent about some of the things that you want to accomplish as a manager. It's one of your goals, having one of your employees say, you know, I had the best first manager ever, or, you know, I had a manager who really helped me in see my career plan, or helped me succeed or succession into what I was looking to do, as opposed to just being placed in a position. So, those are some of the things I think that are important.
It's cool. And I'm thinking about like me as a person, and maybe let's just say the typical first-time manager. There's some excitement there. There's motivation. It's like, wow, this is, you know, a step in my career. I want to prove it. I want to do it. I want to over deliver. So we come in all gung ho, right? And the worst thing I would imagine would be, I'm going to come in and I'm going to fix problems that don't exist. I'm going to come in and I'm going to do things that don't need getting done. So the idea of being able to analyze and look for gaps, and, you know, the folks on this broadcast, a lot of us have been through grad school. We've learned how to do analysis. We've learned how to, you know, critically look at a process to figure out where there's a gap or where something's broken, and try to put our effort there, as opposed to just jumping in, you know, full steam and saying, I'm gonna reshape all this stuff. So same question to you, Meg. What skills would you say really shine or important in those first stages of a new manager's tenure? And do you see that motivation kind of getting in the way and a person wanting to have an impact without actually knowing what needs to get done?
Yeah, you both have brought up some great points here. So when Tanja was talking about the organizational piece, kind of tying into that is that time management piece. Time management, both on that organizational side, as well as, James, what you're talking about, as far as kind of not falling into a rabbit hole. So maybe having those team goals and your goals sitting up there in front of you, you know, wherever you want. To make sure you're tying back to that, because sometimes you can get into this rabbit hole of, ooh, there's opportunity here. Ooh, I can fix this. I can do that. I can do that. And then you're keeping your eye off of, or you're losing sight of those team goals. So time management, and then going back to the beginning, what we were talking about, that communicative piece. Very crucial.
That's interesting. I would say, like, and I love that. And in the beginning, we might be kind of flying by the seat of our pants a little bit. We're learning the ropes. We're competent people, right? We got the job, but we're first-time managers, so we're figuring some things out. Can you think of a way to kind of start to understand your style? And what does it mean to have a managerial style, first of all, and then how do we figure it out? And maybe you can start with that.
Yeah, so I touched on that a little bit at the beginning. And it's, you know, there's lots of different quizzes and resources out there. If you just search the internet, that are great resources to really understand your management style, but it can really take a lot in understanding yourself, to tie that to a certain management style. You know, as I mentioned, I'm a lead by example kind of person, manager, and and then thinking about not only your management style, but how that fits into the needs of your team that you've now established, and how you can use your management style to the advantage of your team and making your team the best that it can be.
Very cool. Tanja, same question, and I'll add a comment. In cases
Sure.
where we just don't know, we know we have to have a style. We might have maybe in our lives. Maybe I've been a good, motivational personality. Maybe I've been inspirational. Maybe I've been, a good time. The things that you might think of related to management style. And so, how does someone find that? And then your thought: do you recommend mentors either in or outside of the of the business?
Yeah. So I will just say that when I was in grad school, I had to do a paper. And what the assignment was is that we had to interview a manager and figure out what their style was, and to figure out why they basically assumed this particular style of management, and why they and why it works for their particular team. And so it just really depends. I mean, management styles, you just don't pick up on the street like you find a penny or something. It's like, it's like trial and error. And unfortunately, you have to figure out what works best for you. If you're not an aggressive person, don't try to be an aggressive manager. It's not going to work. And if you're not a person who basically does well under pressure, then don't be like a micromanager. Or if you're a micromanager, don't try to be a manager who basically likes people to come to their own conclusions. So it just really depends on what you're comfortable with, and it really has to fit within your personality. So maybe one of the things that could probably help is my daughter is in high school. She just started, and they took a personality test. And I was like, when she told me what her personality was, and I was just like, that is correct. That is your personality. So maybe doing a personality test to see, and they do have a first-time manager type of test to see, how your management style is. So maybe take an inquisitive test. I mean, it doesn't have to be solid, but, be honest when you take the test to figure out what type of style fits your personality. And because you don't want to force something, because if it's forced, it's not going to come off right. And this, then it's probably going to land you in HR. So the best thing to do is to kind of figure out what works best with your personality, and making sure that you can really benefit from that. If motivation works for you, if you want to be a motivational manager, then all means be a motivational manager. Even if you want to be a manager who likes to basically give assignments and see what will happen with that employee, will they take it to the next stage? And it's like open management style, and it's kind of, letting your employees kind of figure it out for themselves, or letting your employees self-manage. When you have a group of adults, sometimes it's easier to allow your employees to self-manage, and you get together to allow them know, well, I'm still the manager. You still have to report to me, but tell me where you are in your project. Tell me where you are, and leaving them alone so that they can do their thing. And in most cases, you can definitely do that. In some cases, you have to be a micromanager, and some people can only work that way. If you give them assignment, they do, and then they, sometimes you have to do that. And it really depends on the role of the employee roles. If you manage, let's say, customer service or a call center, unfortunately, you have to be sort of kind of a micromanager, and be, on your employees, stay on the phone, make sure you answer the phone, make sure you're available, make sure you're doing this, that, and the other, don't be off goofing around, take your breaks, come back. That's how it's played. So, everyone kind of understands their role. And some are aggressive managers. I want this report by this date and this, that, whatever, but just make sure that those things are important and are communicated. What was the second part of the question?
A mentor. Do you believe in? Is that what it was?
Yeah, I'm sorry, my computer's dying. Hold on a second.
That's okay.
So I think a mentor is super important. I think you should assign a mentor at onboarding, so that for all employees. And I think managers should definitely have a mentor, because not all managers do it right the first time around. And sometimes you'll ask, VPs or directors, and they say, yeah, that was a big mistake for me, don't do that. So it's really good to have a mentor to kind of talk with and try to strategize to see what worked best, especially if it's a VP in the department. You know, how did you get to this role? What did you do in order to be successful? It's super important to basically make sure that if you want to get there, you're basically talking with the people who have, you know, have walked in those shoes and can tell you what the expectations are, what you're looking at as far as VP responsibility as opposed to manager responsibility. And so I think it's super important, but I think you should start that mentor journey early and often. So I think it's super important to get that in there.
And you mentioned a mentor coming in at onboarding, so maybe a senior manager or someone else in the organization. And that's nice because they have contextual knowledge of the organization, right? And maybe some stories they can tell you about the past. What about a mentor who's completely objective from outside, like, you know, the SCORE program or these different programs where you could actually have a shoulder to cry on in case you didn't want to go to that boss?
That's exactly what I was thinking of, James. Yeah, it's nice to have a mix, you know, whether at your organization you have someone who's assigned or not, which we have looked in that direction as far as more so helping out from an HR perspective and aligning that mentor. But yeah, going back to what I had mentioned as far as initiative, so taking that initiative to maybe align who may be that best mentor from an internal standpoint, but also external standpoint. There's a lot of great associations. So from an HR perspective, a part of SHRM and HRMA, and I have a mentor through HRMA, and he has given me great insight. And yes, exactly, James, what you're talking about, you know, if a shoulder to cry on, or having that perspective from outside to really help effectively work through a goal, issue, problem that you may have. So it's good to have a mix.
Well, I know in my life, my mentors have, I wish that they had helped me not make all the mistakes I've made, but I'm sure that they helped me make fewer mistakes and take fewer bruises. So that's really cool. You know, when I started the broadcast, I mentioned that I was stepping in. I'm not a first-time manager, but first time managing this group. And you know, I still feel a little bit, what do you say, a little green, you know, like kind of going in there and changing the dynamics. And so I mentioned that I had a bunch of peers who I now manage. Well, there's some questions from the audience that have come in, both moving from peer to supervisor, but also maybe peer to supervisor, but you manage folks who are older than you, maybe know more than you about the product or the company, and maybe have more seniority than you. And that's the case with me. And that was my most worrisome part of taking this position, was jumping over people who had been there longer than me. And so when I got peace with it, and I'll ask you the question on your thoughts, it was because I realized they didn't think that I wasn't qualified. They thought I was perfect for the job, but they also thought they were good for the job. So it wasn't like negative feelings toward me ascending to this position, but there was maybe a little bit of it, I don't want to say bitterness, but a little bit of thought on their part that it could have been them on the promotional track instead of me. So other than that, though, they liked me and everything was fine. So what are your thoughts about the dynamic of moving up to a supervisor of people who are maybe older than you, more experienced, longer with the company? And I think, is it Meg's turn? Let's start with Meg.
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, again, so you're in that direction of the buy-in, understanding, you've worked side by side with them. I'm just kind of thinking through this. But so it's a fine balance between that buy-in, showing them your respect for them, but at the same time, you were chosen as the best person for that position. So, you know, let's dig in as a team, respect me as a manager as I respect you. So I guess that respect piece is the biggest tie-in into moving forward in a cohesive manner.
and that was, I think, the heart of my comment. Respect was telling all of these folks in the first meeting, I don't see my job necessarily as managing you. I see my job as managing our department and making sure you can do all the stuff that you need to do. I mean, I had to dance around it because I felt nervous about it. Tanja, what do you think?
Well, I think you should always enjoy all your successes in your life. And here, listen, I guess here is the main thing. So I'm an internal optimist. And so I think if you have a success, you should celebrate that success and be happy in that particular success. So success for me may be a success for you. I mean, you never know. I mean, people are placed in certain positions for certain reasons. And so anytime that you're placed in a position, just know that someone saw something in you that basically said that right now, this is the right person for this particular position. He has earned it or she has earned it. And we're going to celebrate that individual and just move forward and just stay positive, and just be sure in yourself that they picked me. And just as long as you stay positive and as long as you are respecting each and every individual on your team, there should be no reason why you shouldn't be a success. And I would just not linger in the negative. I would just stay in the positive, and just be that optimist and make sure that that you can produce what you need to produce as a manager by just making sure that you stick with positive people, listen to positive messages, and just move forward. I mean, there's not much you can do about individuals picking you. Obviously, they saw something in you that sparked the difference between all of the candidates who came through the door and interviewed for the position. So I would just be proud in the fact that it was me who got chosen, and let's see what I can do in this particular role. So at this point, it's up to you. What are you going to do?
Thanks, Matt. That's kind of how I feel about it. I kind of felt like I just got a little coaching session. So thank you for that. I believe in positivity as well. And I think people like to be around that. So it might be a bumpy day or two with maybe some hurt emotions, but focusing on the prize. So interesting to me right now is we focused on we're in this position, and although we've mentioned talking to our boss or having a mentor, we've really focused on the people that we're managing. So let's just say part of this process of managing folks who are older than you, maybe our job is just to really make sure that the goals of the organization are visible to the team. What do you think about as a new manager, what accountabilities do we have from above? Are there certain things that we need to be, should we interview our boss and our boss's boss? Should we make sure we have a clear 90-day plan? Should we just make absolute sure that there's no uncertainty in what our objective is? And is that part of our ability to communicate well with our superiors? So it's kind of a two-way street is what I'm thinking. Meg, would you talk about that maybe? What kind of research would you do from above, would you say, in your organization to help you do your job in your new role?
Yeah, I think tying back to that initiative, if your boss doesn't have those necessarily hit on those steps yet, or that as far as that relationship with your boss, your clear-cut goals, it's also tying into understanding your boss's management style as well, but really assessing from there and then taking the initiative to make sure you are in line with your boss, your boss's boss, anyone else, respectively above.
Very cool. And just a thought, should you be thinking about the next promotion, or is that like so far away that it's really just about the clear and present chore of being a good first-time manager?
If that's what your initiative is, and in keeping that relationship that or building and maintaining that strong relationship with your boss, is if that's what you desire, then yeah, tying back to that communication piece and making sure you're communicating that to your boss so your boss knows, tying into your succession planning, how to help you get there, how to achieve that.
So seems to be an interesting topic. I think we have a lot of young professionals on the call too, where they're again dealing with situations or conflicts caused by the fact that you're younger than some of the people you manage. And we've been kind of talking about it a little bit, but let's elevate something to a true conflict. Is it like
Sure.
a pistols at noon kind of thing, like a showdown in Dodge City, or how do you manage like a really problematic situation? Is it a case to get HR involved? Maybe Tanja, explain how you would, specifically with like one person where there was a conflict, not everybody uprising. How would you approach that?
Well, it definitely depends on the conflict. Something that is egregious, then maybe get HR involved. But something that you can work out internally with the department, like let's just say if two employees don't agree and they're loudly disagreeing, then maybe pull those two employees in a private room to kind of figure out what the issues are and lay them out on the table and say, like, hey, we're just not going to behave in this manner. If we do have an issue, then we need to basically use our voices in a calm demeanor and figure out what the issues are so we can work them out. We have to recall we're all adults. We can all figure out concerns and we can all work out issues. It just basically takes a little patience. Internal matters, I believe, can stay with managers, but when there's something like egregious, like let's just say a case of racism, discrimination, sex a sex claim or something like sex discrimination, or something that, a threat or a threat of violence. Any of those situations, I would definitely get human resources involved because those are more serious situations. And a lot of companies, and I know Webster University, we have zero tolerance policy for those type of instances. So we just really need to figure out those instances and try to pluck them immediately so it doesn't really cause a lot of harm to the environment, to the team environment, because those type of issues can really drag things down and make things really difficult and really hard to work in. So we are in the position of protecting our employees, making sure that they don't experience things like that. So if you get a whiff of that, then report it to human resources. Don't even try to deal with it. Report those instances directly to us so that we can make sure that we do the right thing, and where it's less risk to you and less risk to the university as well.
So Meg, just a same question. And when I feel like I'm involving HR, it's like I'm running for help. I'm running to get, because I something I wouldn't want to deal with like myself. That's a really bad perspective on my part to think like that, right? Would HR immediately like jump in and start doing things, or is it really like a gentle process where you can interact with HR, maybe start with some advice, start with some triaging, and then move into more aggressive stuff? It just feels to me like an extreme measure to go to HR. Is it or isn't it?
I like that term, triage, by the way.
It should not feel like that, but we're here to help. If you want, we're the perfect individuals to talk through something. If you are thinking, I don't know what's going on here, I don't know how to assess this situation, but really making that effort to step back from the situation, if individual or a few individuals, really thinking about how they are acting, thinking, making sure that your confidence as a new manager isn't intervening with that situation. But yeah, we're talk to your boss, talk to us. We can definitely lend an ear to see if you are just not sure as a first time manager or a senior manager, what exactly is going on, assessing that.
Okay, one
Great.
final question about this. I'm sorry, before there's some audience questions that have come in. Is there
Okay.
a point in time as a first-time manager that we would expect HR to kind of take over something, and now it's an HR and employee thing, and I won't know how it resolves? Or as a manager, am I always like part of that triangle?
So yeah, so as a manager, you're always going to be involved with the decision. Maybe not so much the decision, but I can just speak from the experience because I do a lot of the employee relation cases here, And what we try to do, and I like that terminology, triage, because we do work with the managers here. We really try to figure out issues and concerns and try to tamp those issues out with managers. But if we have to start an investigation, the investigation is internal just to HR, because sometimes it may involve the manager and sometimes it may involve the director. So we want to just take that piece out and make it you know, an impartial investigation. And to do that, sometimes you have to take people out of the equation. And then, but you do bring it back to the manager and say, you know, like, these were the results of the investigation. This is what we found out, with not giving away too much information. Now, managers do have an expectation of getting information from HR. They can expect information up to a certain point where it just becomes riskier for them to know certain aspects of the case. So it just really depends on the situation. And HR is really protective of our employees. We really want to make sure that we're doing the right things and taking the right steps. But we do involve the managers to see, you know, what happened, what was going on, you know, what do you think caused this particular issue? So we're always, you know, involving them to make sure that, you know, has this ever happened before, you know, da 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 da. So we're working through the situation as carefully and as thoughtfully as we possibly can. But in order to do that, sometimes they have to be taken out of the equation. But we always involve the manager in saying, okay, this is what we basically kind of decided as a group. And sometimes that involves our legal department and bringing them in and saying, this is what we decided as a group, and this is how we're moving forward. And everyone has to be on board with the decision, whether it's a good decision or whether it's a decision where you don't 100% agree. As a manager, you have to figure out that, you know, you have to be supportive, okay? And that's supportive in discipline, and that is supportive in decisions regarding legal risk, unfortunately. And knowing that sometimes you won't get all of the nuggets, but you'll get just enough in order to make it, you know, to understand the situation is delicate. I don't know if that explains it all, but.
It does, and I kind of heard you got to advocate for the company, but also for the employee. It seems like you're kind of like right there, and obviously you want business to get done too, so you want this to work out. Interesting. Well, I know in life, and you know, it's something I learned starting this career industry that I work in about 15 years ago, is that we're not prepared for this stuff, and all of a sudden we find ourselves looking for a job, and we have to kind of catch up, you know. So and it seems to me like the bumps in the road are what we tend to focus on and how to overcome them. Maybe that's just how I think sometimes. But I think this is still a joyous occasion, like you said. We have to celebrate, Tanja, right? This is a great thing.
Yes.
We're given this team, and we have a chance to make it happen. So,
yes.
What are your thoughts? You know, closing out today's webcast, maintaining positivity, keeping morale high for a team that's 100% remote. Meg, go. How does that sound?
So exactly that, and using your resources, use your resources, internal, external. Don't just let it all build inside you. Those ups and downs of being not only a first-time manager, but a manager in general. Just use those resources, communication, organization, time management.
Tanja, keeping a remote team happy, and especially in these times, let's say you have 100% remote staff, how can you be your motivational self when there's no handshakes or high fives in the office?
Well, you have to kind of reinvent the workplace, right? So, and I think we at Webster have done a phenomenal job of doing remote. I would say make it fun for the team, you know, have pajama day or whatever, have, you know, a happy hour with your team virtually to stay safe. You can play a lot of games on team meetings, like bingo or something like that. But I would say keep it fun for your employees, just as you would do if you were in a face-to-face interaction. That does not change. And just making sure that the employees know that you're here for them. And that even though that you guys are working virtually, if you still have frustrations, if you still run into roadblocks, reach out to me. You know, I'm just a phone call away. I'm just an email away. I'm just an IM away. I'm just a whatever away. But make sure you're communicating with your employees and make sure that they understand that, you know, I'm just a hop skipping away from you and I can make things happen if you, you know, if we're communicating. So, and just stay positive. You know, this too shall pass. So this period of time will pass. We'll get beyond this. And hopefully we can all be in the same office at once, you know, without our mask. That day is coming. But, you know, we also have to do the things that keep us safe right now. So I would just say, keep it fun. You know, make sure that everyone's still accountable for all of their work. Make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing while they're on remote. But make sure that you are being the same you, the same manager, the same person that was there for them then is there for them now. And just so that they understand that. I do have some disconnect from some managers who reach out and say, you know, I haven't talked to this person in so long. I'm like, well, reach out to them. Call them, email them, do something, you know. So if they're supposed to be working, they're supposed to be working. But it is amazing how people have responded to this pandemic. And I, for one, am very proud of Webster University. And we had to do this like quickly. We had to transition very quickly. And I was one of those individuals on that team. And I can just say that I am so proud of Webster University employees, what you guys have been able to accomplish. And also the managers who basically took this and said, okay, my team is now remote. How am I going to keep them engaged? And I just encourage you to go to the internet, the Google, to figure out new ideas, what to do for your team. There's a lot of exciting things that are out there, and just figure out things that are new things, new things to implement.
Pinterest is
yeah. So just keep it positive, and everything will basically come back to light, and we'll be back.
Yeah, it's definitely an additional challenge as a first-time manager to have that, to create that engagement, that team engagement from afar. So not only what Tanja was talking about, but also really emphasizing any excuse to pick up the phone, to have a Zoom call. You know, if there's been a question going back and forth via email, pick up the phone, do the Zoom, whatever it takes. I mean, still keep in perspective that time management piece, making sure you're having those weekly or bi-weekly one-on-one meetings.
Yeah, challenges still work too. If you have a very competitive team, sometimes challenges work. Maybe put up some gift cards, put up a free dinner, put up something. Time off? No. Put up something that people will strive for, and people will, you know, you'll see the engagement change. So.
Yep, that's I appreciate that. I was inspired at the end right there with this new way of working. There's opportunity to do things differently. Interestingly, I come from the tech world, and in our world, people are all over the planet. So remote is actually the way we've tended to do it, and the way we solve it is having lots of little touch bases instead of letting things sit for 2 weeks and have emergencies happen. You know, touch base every now and then. We call them stand-up meetings. So why not have? But you don't want it to be 2 hours long either. But keep it upbeat, yeah, and create communication channels. But I learned a lot, you guys. Thank you for letting me chat with you. I thought this was super helpful. And folks, we're out of time for the questions, but I did post into the chat, cross-post, Meg and Tanja's contact information. You guys wouldn't mind getting an email from the audience, would you?
Absolutely not.
Very cool.
All right.
So
you want me to?
I already zapped it out there for them. So
oh, okay.
If they want to get a hold of you, you might start getting emails. But thank you all for joining us today. I wanted to thank you guys for a really interesting session.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, James.
And yep, and check the Webster webinar calendar. You go to webster.careers, click events on top. You can see our upcoming calendar for the rest of the year. Super good stuff. We'll have more great presenters like we did today. Thanks again, everybody. Take care. All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.